Welcome to the People Being Real show. I am sitting with the one and only Lee Harris. Welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me. It's great to be with you.
It's great to have you here, and congrats on the new book, Energy Speaks. I had the chance to read it, and we were talking about it off air, but I love the tone of it. It's, life is full of ups and downs and challenges, and you go into all these important topics, authenticity and intuition and judgment and money and all these different topics that are just a part of our everyday lives. And I just love the tone and the humility and just the overall value and message of your book.
So, great. Thank you.
Thank you for that.
Thank you. That's really meaningful because I don't know, I feel like we all need more of that in the world. So it's always been fuel for me, that energy.
The first chapter of the book opens up about your story, and I am a sucker for vulnerability and realness because I'm a firm believer that that's what ties us together and gives us hope. We can learn from each other versus being isolated and thinking that everybody else has it together, but we're not not good enough. And you just tackle that right head on in the first chapter of the book. So the reason why I bring that up is because I love during these interviews to ask the guest to share a story or maybe a time in your life when your authenticity was challenged, accepting maybe a part of yourself or accepting somebody else or something else in your life. And so wanted to invite you to share a vulnerable story.
Yeah. For me, it kind of, you bring up the introduction chapter. It really was my teens. My teens was kind of my most troubled and difficult period. I come from a loving family, a supportive family. So it wasn't my family. It was all very much to do with me and my own identity. And I knew that I wasn't heterosexual. I suspected I was probably gay, and that was like, oh, damn, this isn't going to go well. I was born in 1976. So, it wasn't like as a kid, you were invited to see yourself in a relationship. And the main reaction you got if you were gay, or if people thought you were gay, was they immediately thought AIDS, you're going to die, it's going to be an awful life, and you're not going to have love in your life. So I was kind of haunted by that. And I also didn't realize I was so intuitive. I was a really emotional kid. So I would have really big emotional kind of ups and downs. And I was sent to an all boys secondary school, which is like the worst.
Yeah, it sounds like it'd be brutal.
Oh, it was brutal in terms of how, boys aren't encouraged to emotionally express or feel anyway. And so that period of my life was kind of the darkest. And I turned to eating. So I would binge eat. I would eat like 5 Snickers bars in one go, and I'd eat them all in like 10 minutes, looking for some kind of temporary relief. Mm-hmm. And I did that every single day. And I was taken to Weight Watchers age 10. And I think I lost like 14, 15 pounds when I was 10. But then it was just like all through my teens, eating was like my way of trying to soothe myself. And the breakthrough happened at 16 when I started to tell a few friends about my sexuality. And that was like, oh my God, the doors opened because they weren't like condemning me. They weren't judging me. And then I told my mom, and that didn't go very well. And that's quite typical. She was just scared. She was worried for me. And that really wedged mine and her relationship for about 2 years. And I think that whole period was really tough, but now I look back, it kind of emancipated me from the family because I was still living at home, but I knew something in my brain was like, I've got to figure this out I'm alone, and I've got to figure this out by myself. And we're great now. But I really had to go through some stuff and have some really tough conversations with her and my whole family, and we all had to come through it together and kind of evolve together because we're talking about 25 years ago, so it was a very different climate, a very different way of seeing things. So that was really, I think in a weird way, that's why I have become this passionate advocate for expression and ended up doing this work where I help people with those feelings, which I would never have predicted, but it's exactly what I needed. Yeah.
What did you think you would do when you were a kid? When you grew up?
Oh, I totally knew what I was going to do. So when I was a little kid, I wanted to apparently be a singer, according to my dad, but I don't remember that. He said when you were like 3 or 4, I was going to be an actor. And I was that was my gift. Like as a child, I was in all of these stage productions and I could transform and turn into somebody else and essentially live through being someone else, because I was having like a serious identity crisis. I think I didn't really know who I was. Other people may have been able to say it, but I just had a really low self-esteem and a low sense of self-identity. So to me, to shapeshift into this other person in a story that was given to me, and unbeknownst to me at that time, it was working with the energy of an audience as well, which of course now I see completely differently. I'm like, oh, but I always used to, I remember one of the shocking things to me was, you know, you'd be backstage with fellow actors, because I performed through my 20s and a little bit through to my early 30s in smaller ways. And some of them would go, oh God, it's a really rubbish audience tonight, really annoying me. And I'd always find that such an odd thing when I heard other actors say that, because to me they were just different. And if they were different, that meant you became different. So some nights you were a bit more extrovert in your performance because they were kind of... So to me, that was this energy dance and communion with a group that it just really lit me up. And now I look at it and I'm like, it's so shamanic, theatre and performance. And so, yeah, it's just, but no, I found my way out of that in my late teens. I kind of knew that acting was going to be done for me. It's like it served its purpose.
It's so interesting how it has come full circle, because you're still on stages now doing different modalities, channeling versus memorizing lines to scripts.
Well, and that is the funniest thing about it. It kind of, I was so bad at being myself. Like I went to drama school to finish my training, and I would marvel at there were like 20 of us who got in. I think they auditioned 1,500 people. So it was really competitive to get in. But I remember when I got in, I was still a character actor. And my big problem was I still didn't quite know who I was. I was still figuring that out. I would see these other actors who were kind of more like the Tom Cruise, Julia Roberts style, where they could kind of be themselves and emanate something. And I'd be like, wow, I just couldn't do that. So it's ironic to me now that I kind of not only do this, but also that even this was kind of like a coming out for me, because channeling and metaphysics to some people was then and still is to some people a bit of a stigma and a bit of a weird thing. And I didn't really want to have to deal with that. So as that grew around me, this work, I've had to continually just let it go and go, okay, well, whatever. You stand there, something's going to happen, someone's going to react. Right. And can you be okay with that? Can you do that, be that, and then go home and not think about it?
I love that. I can resonate being up on a stage facilitating for an audience. Like you get one go. It's not like a podcast where you can like push pause and talk off air and we record. No, you're holding space for an entire experience. And so you really have no choice but to trust yourself and to be connected to the audience to best serve them. But I know that there was another story that you were thinking of telling on your way over about relationships that I would love to invite you to share as well.
Yeah. It was funny. Because you asked me before, you said, think of a story or a challenge or a breakthrough. And it kind of relates a little bit to childhood. So I met my now husband in late 2015 and we got married about 1 year and 3 months ago. So we've been together almost 4 years. And when I met him, I'd been calling in a really good love. And I'd also kind of let go of the idea of the one, or I kind of thought, who knows? It's like, I would love that, but I just want to meet someone who I feel really met by on all levels. But I also knew that meant I would go to, that would require me doing the same thing. And I hadn't really had like a big, serious love relationship for quite a few years. And my last big one was quite traumatic at the end. And so I definitely like recoiled. And so when I met him, all the stuff came up. It was great. It was like I met him, Stephen, I knew he was, I was like, oh, this is. And then all the stuff came up. And I actually enlisted a therapist. And I'd never done classical therapy before. I'd done 1 million personal development workshops and forum settings and all kinds of stuff, but I was amazed how the perfect storm of healing came up when I met him. It was like the right time. I was ready, and all this kind of shame, the shame of being gay, the stuff that kind of I went through in my teens, and also having to let go of some of the stuff in my last big relationship where I'd kind of walked away going, oh my God, I never want to do that. I'll never open to that level again if that's what happens at the end. It all just came up. And I found that through living through it, I think I did weekly therapy for about 6 months. And then we would do every couple of weeks for about another 6 months. And then I was done. Then that was enough. But it was amazing to me how layers and layers would just keep arising. And the way it enabled me to kind of go back, and as I was comfortable to go a bit deeper each time, it was like I could feel it. All the work I'd done to that point on myself and with others was all in my head as well. So I knew what was going on. It was like, oh, this is like the perfect storm. This is, you're at the right place in the right time, and now you're going to have to go back down into this. And there was some recall there where I would go back into the pain of those teenage years and some of the things that happened. And it was like, it just felt like a bomb going off in my body. But it was amazing how if I stayed with it, and I trusted Arthur and my therapist, and I carried on with the process, and especially turning up to therapy on the day that I wanted to cancel. Like, the day that I was like, I don't want to do this today. They were always the best days to do it. It was interesting how just staying with it, and the arrival of Stephen and a mirror, to quote a word you used earlier, and someone, the one thing he and I had from the word go was super courageous communication. Deeply uncomfortable. Like, even when we started writing to each other at the beginning, because we met on a dating site, we would write these really long messages, and we'd always both send a message and then be like, I shouldn't have said that, but hey, it's good that I did.
Sure.
And the other person would always love it. So,
and then the last question here about your story that I have for you is in terms of this heart opening, which allowed you to get past some of your blocks and to connect and move forward in the relationship. What advice would you have for somebody else that might be experiencing their heart closing up a little bit right now?
Yeah, the heart closing is... There's a couple of reasons our heart closes. Our heart closes very wisely when we're with the wrong person. You know what I mean? And I've had, I'm sure, I've had that many times where I'm like, oh, hang on, I've just realized mind, body, and soul. I should not be in this room. I should not be in this relationship. And it's, sometimes it's not even a reflection on the other person. It's just you're in the wrong chemistry fit. And some part of your psychology is trying to make you make this chemistry fit. And, you're not doing you or them any good by doing that. So I think the other side though, is if you do feel that your heart is closing down, that thing wants to open. Like, it wants to open. It wants to open and it wants to connect. So if something in you is making it go the other way, get really curious about it and give it some time and give it some space and some work. So in my case, I was at a point in time where I was able to afford weekly therapy, and that wouldn't have been true for me 10 years ago. But 10 years ago, I would have gone and done workshops, or I'd have read books, or I'd have had a friend, I'd have done an exchange with someone who could hold space for me, So whatever that support is, like, put it under the microscope. So I gave it a year, and the most important thing to do is to not beat yourself up, judge yourself, blame yourself, which of course we'll all do. But you have to try and remember not to do that and go, no, I'm going to figure this out. Because also we go through healing stages in our life. And when we arrive at different ages and in different formations with different people, places and things, the soul and the heart goes, oh, great. Now he can open up this part of himself that he was never quite in the right circumstance to do until now. But now he's here, we can let him open out that talent. Because he's learnt more about using his voice with his podcast. He's now got love in his life. He feels more supported. So just for example. So I think it's also to not be shocked when that comes along. I think we have this weird linear life as it's sold to us. And actually every decade, every year, we're all going through all these changes, and our life circumstances are changing and the world is changing. And it knocks different openings out of us at different times, and sometimes we close down before we open.
Beautiful. Thank you for sharing. And I think that you talk about this a lot in your book about the energy work and relationships being like that. There's opportunities oftentimes in the mundane moments of our lives where there's, signs from the universe teaching us a lesson and so forth. So I figure this is a good segue to learn more about your energy work that you're doing, which is moving people across the globe. So thank you for what you do. And I want to kind of start out just kind of top level, because energy, I would think, is kind of an abstract word that could be viewed many different ways. Maybe you believe in, energy, maybe you're skeptical. What's a good kind of like on-ramp to talking about energy as to what it is, in your opinion?
Well, there are so many different, if you look at the universe and you look at nature and you see what's all around us, there are different places that give us different feelings. So for example, if you go into a beautiful garden, you can go, oh, well, the flowers and the trees are beautiful. And then you go into a room that someone has painted black. You might think it's the beauty that is giving you a sensory experience when you're in that garden, but it isn't. It's the energy of these alive plants and trees. And the best demonstration I can give around people is the energy that we give off all the time. So for example, we're sitting here now, and we hadn't met before today, but I really liked you. As soon as I met you, we're having a nice vibe.
Couldn't agree more.
But it could go the other way. Like I could be sat here like this. Yeah, Mark. Yeah. And that would give us a completely different energy. If and so I just did a kind of crass demonstration of someone who's kind of closed, suspicious,
literally closed out.
Yeah, like yeah, I'm suspicious. I don't know what you've got me on this podcast for. Yeah, what are you asking me? I might answer, I might not. I don't know, Mark. I don't know who you are. So there are all degrees in between that, between like the vibe that we've got and this, and those small measures of energy differences between all of us are influencing us all the time, every single day. So if you're somebody who is like still dealing with a chronic rejection issue, you're somebody who's still deep in the pain of being rejected and you haven't really examined that or healed that yet, the minute you meet somebody who you go, oh, do you want to come to this party? And I go, no, I don't want to go to that party. Just because I'm like a grumpy person who's taking pleasure in like being rude to everybody because I've got my own bag of issues, you walk away going, oh, I was rejected again. So we're all interpreting, we're all in our own thing, taking signals, cues and impulses from other people all the time and the world at large, and we're running with it. So, you're like, oh, I woke up this morning and I felt great and I was having such a good day. And then by the end of the day, I felt miserable. Well, what did you do? Well, I watched Fox News and then I went round to my friend who's always complaining about her divorce, and then I ate 6 donuts. And you're like, yeah, okay, let's just look at what that's the perfect storm right there. So where energy is important is just some kind of even just a small awareness on what we're doing, what we're ingesting, whether that's nutrition, whether that's other people's energy, and how we're interacting with it. Because there's so many impulses going on all of the time. So the reason I share all of this is I think when we kind of get under the hood of energy a bit and start to bring a certain understanding that energy is real and tonality is telling you far more than somebody's words and is affecting you in a really deep way, then you start to be able to have perhaps a new level of soul maturity around how you're moving through the world, and more importantly, how you're being affected by the world.
So my question, in a world where there is energy, everything is energy, walking into a room, that's dark and, maybe it's built to scare you versus, going out to the beach on a sunny day. My question for you is, I'm curious to hear what your take is of what is authentic. And the word authenticity in general, and this easily this influenced world that we live in.
It's funny. The first thing that comes to mind when you say that is being in your power, because I think you can be authentic and be doing it for someone else's agenda, dragged along by what someone else wants. But I think being authentic is being in your power, like being able to say something and feel a kind of strong connection to what's going on inside you when you say it, even if you're a little bit nervous. So yeah, for me, that's the first thing that comes into my head. I think being authentic is feeling safe enough in your expression and your position that regardless of how this might be taken, it's, especially if it's important for you to be authentic, either in your words or the way you're showing up in the world or your action, you know it's coming from something inside you that's driving you to do it, and therefore there's a truth in it, even if you don't fully understand it yet and you don't quite know how it's going to play out, but you know that you're being driven, that this is the next puzzle piece for your life.
So what I'm hearing you say is just to be in your power is kind of the foundation of what's authentic.
I guess maybe I'm more adding to the conversation, because there's so much out there about authenticity and, you know, be vulnerable, be naked in your truth. I mean, I feel like we just kind of touched on it a little bit with like, where is the line? But I think it's funny. I have a really good friend who just recently I was talking to about some stuff that's going on in her marriage, and she was doing that thing we all do, or that we can do, where she was troubled by some stuff that was going on. And as she was telling it to me, she was like, and he says I'm overreacting, and maybe I am overreacting, and da-da-da-da. And I just was like, no. I was like, you're feeling all of this stuff. Doesn't make him wrong and you right, but if he's trying to tell you that you shouldn't be feeling that stuff, and you're now trying to sideswipe it, that's not going to go well for both of you. This is authentic to you. And sure, maybe it is a trigger from your parents, but it's being provoked by his angry reactions and his angry outbursts. And if you can't be authentic in expressing that to him and be heard and seen in that, you're in trouble in the relationship, because the relationship isn't run by one person. It's a meeting of two. And, you know, she knows all this. And so she was like, it's good to hear that, because I've been second guessing myself. So her authentic feelings, because someone else was denying them, and someone she loves and someone she's close to and has children with, she was easily beginning to deny and suppress her feelings, which I know really well. I'm sure lots of listeners know really well. So yeah, I think authenticity, there's something inside. For me, it's like there's a fire in the stomach that comes with what we produce, what we say, what we create. And when that fire gets loud enough, we're willing to go there. And I think it's like anything, it's a muscle. The more you have difficult conversations where you're like, oh God, I don't know how they're going to react to this, but I know I've got to say it because for years I didn't. The more you practice that, the easier it becomes. Then you don't even think you're being authentic anymore. You just think you're speaking the way you speak. But if you think back to 7 years ago, you're like, oh wow, I would never have said that 7 years ago, but I've forgotten because I'm living now. Like one of the things I've kind of learned as I've got older is peace is happiness. And I used to think that like excitement and joy and like they were the things I was I'm very all or nothing in my personality, and that has tempered as time has gone on, but that could cause me trouble. Peace is actually happiness. So to me, peace is fuel, because it's like the more moments of peace that we have, I always feel when I'm peaceful, I'm like, oh, this is happiness. It's not the roller coaster ride. It's not that can be part of it. That can be joy. That can be fun. But actually, for me, the more peace has become something I valued rather than saw as a remedy for burnout, which is how I probably used to see it. It's kind of like, oh, yeah, that is a fuel for not only our life, but our energy in the world as well. And I know I love being around people who have a strong sense of their own containment, their own power. They have room for peace inside themselves, because that comes through.
One of the questions I have for you is, you find yourself in a situation where, you maybe walk into like a party where you just like something feels off. So I'm kind of curious how you course correct in those situations that energetically just don't feel good in the moment.
Yeah, I tend to leave, and I won't leave like too abruptly unless it's if I walk in and something's like really bad, and then I'll find a way out. Unless it's something that I feel like I'm supposed to be involved in. Like if I walk in there and there's something going on that doesn't feel right, and there are some people who are hurt or suffering, and I feel like there's a way I can interject or bring some balance or some clarity or something, and then I'll do something. But no, I don't tend to I'm quite good. Like I'll stick things out I have to, but no, not at this age. I'm 43 now. You know what I mean? In my 20s and 30s, I suffered a lot in relationships, in group dynamics, and now I'm like, no, this isn't for me. So I'll find a way to exit. I won't feel beholden. I'll give something 10 minutes, but if in 10 minutes I'm getting the same signals and it feels wrong for me, nope. I would find a way to exit.
Well, what would your husband Steven say? What would be his advice, or what would he say that you could work on?
What would he say that I could work on? He would probably say, like on a pithy level, he would say remembering where things are in the house, because I will lose. Like just yesterday, I'm just about to leave. I'm trying to get to the office on time, which is 5 minutes away, but he has that find a phone thing.
Okay, yeah.
And he's walking, he's obviously pressed the button, and suddenly I can hear his find a phone buzzer kind of very close to me. And he walks up to me, and I have his phone in my left pocket and my phone in my right pocket.
Wow.
He just got a new phone cover, so it's similar to mine. So in my defense, I was rushing and I must have seen, but I didn't know I had two phones in my pocket. So I'm a bit scatterbrained about like physical, and he'll always know where things are. And I think on a bigger level, he would probably say being kind to myself and taking the pressure off myself. Yeah, he would.
That's a good one.
Yeah.
I can relate to that.
Yeah.
Jen would probably say that to me as well.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. Cool. Thank you for being so honest. And then the last question of this part of the interview is I read a post that you made on social media about the golden age of humanity, that we're entering into the golden age of humanity. So I'm just curious to know more of what that means to you.
Well, it's funny because that came through my guides, and you know, as a human being, I can find that a little controversial, because you know, I think I think that the narrative that most people are running is everything's going to shit, you know. But they talk about this is a really golden age for us. And they say that, you know, it started a few years before 2012. And they say that it's not necessarily going to be an easy time. There are certainly a lot of things that are going to be challenging for us. But they say that you are coming back together as a humanity in a way that you haven't been together for a very, very long time. And this is something that will go on for decades. But you know, they've kind of talked about this as a golden era for humanity, which I think is tricky when you look at the form of things as how you identify what's a golden age. But the other side of it is, you know, I heard this the other day. Someone was saying, you know, we're the most we're the most safe than we've ever been. We've got there are all of these ways that we are at the peak of humanity in terms of our living circumstances right now, even still with disparity and poverty. And just if you look at the actual statistics of the whole planet, they say this is the best time on earth, and yet we are more riddled with anxiety, depression, and existential crisis than we've ever been. So I think that's really interesting, because I feel like we're in a bit of a spiritual crisis as much as anything. But I feel like through that, we're all coming back to a sense of life is bigger than we think, and bigger than the newsreel tells us, and bigger than having a mortgage, and you know, some of the stuff that we've been kind of indoctrinated with. So I think that to me is where I see it being a golden age.
Sure. Definitely. I mean, we're going up Maslow's hierarchy for sure. And obviously everyone's at a little different point on the spectrum than other people. But I mean, if you're living in America, you're not necessarily looking out your door every single day terrified. Now, there are some people, but I think, you know, generally speaking, it's probably safer than it's ever been in the country. Yeah.
I'm
probably not one to speak factually.
And the problem with those kinds of generalizations is it's true, isn't it? There'll be somebody listening or watching or reading who'll be like, well, not for me. And I totally get that. I mean, that's the tricky thing, because we are all so different. But statistically, I mean, that's the most interesting thing about where we're at. So, you know, kind of just to circle back to what you said about hope, I do have hope for the future, not just for us as a group, but for all of us personally. And I've been in those places where you want to give up, and I've had a few real deep dark nights of the soul in my life. But every time I've come through them, and sometimes it's taken a couple of years, I've come out the other side and experienced a next level of life or a new level of life. And so I have trust in that. I have trust in the human capacity to adapt and rebuild and figure things out.
Hell yeah. I agree. What can we do to support you, Lee?
I'll put it this way. If you want to check out any of my work, it's at leeharrisenergy.com. To support me, it's been lovely to sit here with you and all of these people that we can feel, even though you're not here right now. But yeah, all of my work is found at leeharrisenergy.com. And those monthly energy update videos are really the most popular thing I do, and they're free. They're on YouTube. We also do a written version at my website. So if you sign up for my newsletter, you'll get notified every time there's a new one, every time I have a new course. I have a members community for people who want to dive deep with me every month called The Portal. Nice. And of course, the book.
And the book is out.
Yeah, the book is, it came out in March in America.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Yeah. It's at Barnes & Noble. It's on Amazon worldwide. And actually, if you're interested in learning more about it, we have on the homepage of my website, right there at the top, you'll see you can watch a 70-minute interview that I did with Regina Meredith, who wrote the foreword, all about the book. And that's a free video. And if you go to that part of the website, you'll see all the places you can order the book.
Mm-hmm. It's an exceptional book. I've had the opportunity to read it. I give it 2 thumbs up. And the way I see myself utilizing the book moving forward is to just have it nearby on like a day where, maybe I'm having a, conversation with myself about my financial situation or about a relationship, and just being able to open it up to that page and getting a really soothing perspective. You have good exercises and affirmations in there as well that are very expansive and optimistic. I definitely recommend it.
That's exactly how we hoped the book would be used, that people would just open to a page. And that's why we broke all the topics out into kind of easy to find sections. So yeah, great. Thank you.
Nailed it. Pure intention manifested. Well, what final words of wisdom, closing advice do you have for listeners of people being real to live a beautiful, fulfilling, happy, authentic life?
I would just like to say it's been a pleasure to be here with you. I love what you're doing with the show. As you know, because you mentioned this to me before we got on air, one of the things that saved my life when I was 16 was the Oprah Winfrey Show. Not when, way before Super Soul Sunday, she would just speak to everyday people about their challenges, their trials, their breakthroughs. And for me, it was oxygen that people were being real. So I love what you're doing with this show, and that, we're able to have real conversations about, not just the Instagram selfie that looks good on the beach, but also just the stuff that we all go through. And we often go through in isolation. And so for me, I feel like the more we can have those conversations with each other and sometimes be the leader in the room for those conversations, even if you're not convinced when you leave the room that everyone in the room was entirely comfortable, that you went there and brought this group conversation. It's interesting. I've had some experiences in my life where I've had to learn sometimes we are the person who's going to lead that conversation. And 3 conversations later, your friend goes, "Mark, thank you so much, because when you first kind of came around here talking about all that relationship intimacy stuff, at first I wasn't quite sure, but now I'm really grateful," because, sometimes we have to be the person to initiate. And I don't mean force it on people, or if people are giving you negative signals, like stop, but just sometimes we have to be the person to kind of, maybe we've read more or studied more in this area, so we can help bring that into our families or our relationships. And that's something that's changed for me as I've got older.
The true leader, the one and only Lee Harris.
Thank you.
This has been such a joy. I'm so glad that we met. Thank you, Kim Corbin, Skipper, for introducing us. And I'm excited. You're welcome back anytime. I think we could talk for hours upon hours.
I want you to come on my podcast too.
Sign me up.
I want to hear all about you and this show.